Good morning and welcome to another Kenny Cars and Coffee, where today I'm going to answer some more of your questions. I've got a few things to show you, and a lot of people have asked about the difference between autocross and track as far as spring rates. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And I've got some really good questions here. But I've got a show and tell first. I've been showing you the JRZ, which is a great shock. It's the street version of some very expensive race shocks. And that's for the S197, and then for the SN95 cars, the Strange that we have custom built. And this is what we call our budget-friendly package for the S197. Now this is an H&R, and it's, as you can see, it's adjustable to adjust the ride height. It's got a conical spring, which means it sits right on, fits just like a factory spring. We've got it mounted up as we do for all the shocks we send out. The thing is, this has a front spring rate of about 630, and from a previous, you didn't know that 650 is what we use for the advanced track guys. This also seems to work pretty good for intermediate people and as a street package. And what the difference is, it's adjustable. The fronts are adjustable. It has like 12 clicks. So for the street, you'd want to click it pretty much all the way down, and for the track, you'd want to click it up. And the way that you want to know if you've got enough shock is if you're on track, it's all about control. If the car doesn't feel like it's got control, add a little more shock, and just add like one click at a time. And here what I've done is the adjusters on the bottoms have actually marked plus and minus. So anytime you crawl under a car to make an adjustment, if you have to think, it takes time. If you just look at something that tells you what to do, it saves time. So the H&Rs are adjustable front, but the rears are self-adjusting, which means there's no adjustment on them. And also, the rears aren't total coilover. The spring sits on this little perch, and you can see it's adjustable, so the rear spring is adjustable to match the front, so you can adjust your ride height. And it's something that we've used for a long time. I'm really happy with. And we also have the H&R Street Performance, which is like a 400-pound front, which is it's a really good street package. Oh, by the way, I want to thank Tim Tomsek for letting us borrow these shocks for today. These are his, going to be shipped out the first of the week. But also on Tim's comments, he said he was running an 18 by 10 wheel with a 275 tire. Next time you need tires, I'd like to see you go up to a 285/35. That's a better fitment for a 10-inch wheel. Also, it's a better tire for a heavy car like a Mustang. So that's our shocks for today. Last week, we kind of the last minute showed you on the SN95 IRS cars, my aluminum diff mount bushings, and they are in a plastic bag. So this week, I'm doing a little better job of showing exactly what they are. Now this is how they're set up, and you can see that between there's big washer, little washer, big washer, little washer, big washer, and they're all aluminum. Everything's aluminum, which means that that's going to act like a heat sink and help pull some temperature out of the differential. Now this is the way, right here is where the differential would mount, and that's the actual OE position. But what we found, I can't remember the years, this is like from 99 to maybe 01, there was Ford had a big driveline vibration issue with the IRS cars. And we had one customer that was to a Ford dealership, I think it may have been Kentucky somewhere, and he'd been in there 4 times for driveline vibrations, and they changed the drive shaft and did this and did that, and he still had the vibration. He brought it to us, and all we did is I reversed the stack on the washers so that the differential mounted up here. In essence, we moved the differential up that much and increased the pinion angle. Took his vibration all away. So all of my cars, I reversed the washers so that we actually moved the nose of the differential up and increased pinion angle, and it seems to work like a charm. I have to have help. I can't remember everything. Who all is with us today, and This is terrible. I mean, I should do better than this. Who's with us today? What kind of car do we have? Because that's kind of interesting. If I know what cars are out there, I can kind of craft what I'm going to talk about. And like every Wednesday, Carrie's asking, what are you going to talk about? I said, well, I don't know. Not until about Thursday or Friday, I sit down and look at some of the comments and questions that have come in. And what I try to talk about is what you're interested in, not what I want to talk about. So every week I'll look at some of the questions that have come in and I'll craft what I'm going to talk about around those questions, which seems to work pretty good because that's what you want to know. So working on today's questions. This is Kenneth with a 92 GT convertible, and he's asking about platform strengthening. That is a big, big issue with the SN95, especially the convertibles, or the Fox, with the convertibles. Back then, the convertibles were built by, I think, 2 different companies, and by today's standards, they were really sloppy. And each company had a different way of trying to support the chassis in between because of no roof. But at the very least, you have to have subframe connectors. Our double-cross subframe connectors work really, really well. And it's a subframe connector that welds to the front and rear subframes and has a cross piece in the middle that actually bolts to the seat frame, which does 2 things. Once it strengthens the seat frame, and also it reduces the span versus capture ratio, so it becomes pretty stiff. And that had been around for a long time. We were the very first company to come out with a double-cross subframe connector. A lot of people have copied it since. And typically on a Fox, we put a jacking rail and a matrix brace. Except on the convertibles, you almost have to look underneath and see what they've got along the pinch weld, because different companies do different things. If you can get a 1-inch square jacking rail in there, great. Then you can add that in the matrix brace. If not, if you could send me a picture of what's your from underneath the car, what it looks like, what kind of bracing it is between the doors, I'll see if I can figure out a way to get it stiffer. The other thing, anybody's got a convertible, you're putting on chassis stiffening, subframe connectors, jacking rails, matrix. Anytime you do add weld stiffening to a convertible, the top has to be up and the doors have to be closed. And the reason for that is these cars are so flexible. We get, and not a lot, but every now and again we'll get a call of somebody that had the top down or the door open when they welded the subframe connectors on. They put it on the ground, they couldn't get the door shut. That just shows you how much flex is in that chassis. So if you got a convertible, you're doing chassis stuff, top up, doors closed. Okay. Now John had some really good questions. He's talking about, wants to know about shock theory. We'll get into that a little bit in the 5-day. Oh, the 5-day, by the way, we don't have a date for it yet. Certainly these are kind of like different times, and we're running a super small staff, and we'll see if we can come up with a new date for the 5-day workshop on transforming your driving experience for the next maybe week or so. We're trying to work that in with a lot of everything else. Well, I'll go over some shock theory in the 5-day workshop. But he's also asking about weight transfer and axle suspension geometry, too much jacking effect. Okay, I'm guessing that's kind of like in the back going around the corner. The back wants to jack up. But I'll get the weight transfer. Managing weight transfer is incredibly important. When you're driving on track, your very primary job is to manage the weight. And what do I mean by that? Well, wherever there's weight, there's traction, unless there's too much weight and you lose grip. If you're coming off of a corner, you want the weight to the back so you got traction. If you went into the corner, you want the weight to the front so you can turn. So the whole idea is you have to learn to kind of feel where the weight of the car is. I'll give you a good example of this back, a long time ago. I can't remember when, but one time Jim Capisano, who was the editor of Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards at the time, came to one of our Kenny Burn driving events, and he was so impressed with how much he learned over the course of a weekend that every new editor that came to the magazine he sent to me to get trained, because these magazine guys have to go do events, driving events, and he wanted all those people to be safe and know what they're doing. Well, what I'm getting to is Evan Smith, who a lot of you may know, he's been a writer for all the magazines for a long time. Right out of the box, Evan was like really fast, except he had no idea where the weight is. So I'm kind of like, oh, because the car is going really fast, but you really can't feel where the weight is. It's kind of floating around. So I really had him focused on, you know, where's the weight? Weight to the back off the corner, weight to the front braking, weight to the front when you're turning. And once he kind of mastered that, he got even faster, and he's been very quick ever since. He's typically one of the quickest editor guys at any of these events. So that's a little bit on weight transfer. I mean, that's your job, to know where the weight is and feel the weight so you can make the car work better. And the too much jacking, we talked about this before, we'll talk about it in the 5-day, but what happens with a Mustang when you're going around a corner, you know, you just feel that inside tire lift up. And when it lifts up, you know, you're putting way too much weight on the outside tire, which means that you get to the gas too soon, you don't have an inside tire down, the car gets loose. And remember, loose is when the back of the car hits the fence first. What we've done with the geometry in my rear grip kit for S197s pretty much changes all that, because we changed the instant center we'll get into in the 5-day, which is controls the anti-squat, which is how much squat goes on the tire. Anti-squat is when the car and the spring come down before, how much it comes down before it puts weight onto the ground, which means traction. With not much anti-squat, the spring is going to come down a lot before it gets weight on the tires. With anti-squat, it's going to push weight sooner. The other thing is I bring the roll center down with the roll center relocation kit. Now the roll center on S197 is the point that the back of the car wants to roll around. And if you think about it, if you've driven around a corner pretty quickly, you don't feel the inside tire get loose or get light. And that's because the roll center is about in the middle of the differential. Now, where the panner bar crosses the center line of the car, that's your roll center. And what we've done is with the panner bar relocation kit, we've actually moved it all the way down to the bottom of the differential. So you're rolling at a much lower attitude. So the back of the car doesn't want to roll up as much. And if it doesn't roll up as much, that means going through a corner, you don't have to wait as long for the inside tire to come back down and get traction so you can get off the corner. And that's important. I mean, if you can get off the corner quicker than anybody else, you're going to be faster on the straightaway than anybody else, because exit speed in the corner is directly in relationship to the terminal speed at the end of the straightaway. Okay, let's see. This is Dan, and cooling on track, radiator oil cooler, differential. We'll start with that. And he's got a 14 Mustang. And cooling on track, if it's just a standard Mustang or Boss, one of our triple core, triple pass radiators will do a whole lot to cool the car. And what I mean by triple thick, triple pass, it's actually, we partnered with one of our suppliers, and the radiator is actually triple thick over normal. It's got smaller little veins in there, which means we get like 18% more coverage of the surface area, and it's triple pass, which means the water flows in, back, and out. In racing, you know, dual pass radiators are pretty prevalent in racing, and that's where the water comes in the top and then out the bottom. Well, in the Mustang, the in and out are in different parts of the radiator, so doing a dual pass is impractical, so we came up with a triple pass, so we got a lot of cooling. To give you an idea, one of our customers with a GT350, at Road America, it brought his on-track temperature down 30 degrees, which is a ton. So if it's just a standard track day car, a good radiator, unless you have real overheating problems or you live in the south or somewhere it gets really hot, you really don't need an oil cooler. I mean, it would be nice, but not necessary. And as far as the differential, for diff cooler for track days, we typically have not had a problem because you're only on the track maybe 25 minutes or so, 40 minutes tops. And the diff doesn't seem to get hot enough to have a problem. The only thing is, make sure on the top of your axle, there's kind of like a little knob nipple that sticks up. That's your vent. Make sure that's open. And if you want, you can, rather than have the factory type vent, you can screw in like a brass nipple and then put some hose on top of that. and run that up and make a couple of curves, and that'll keep it from puking out oil. The other thing you can do is, if you're not sure if it's getting hot or not, is there's temperature strips that you can actually put on the differential and see how hot it's getting. As long as it's under about 270 degrees, you're fine. About 270 degrees, you really want to take a look at getting that cooled down, because when we do our diff coolers, it's thermostatically controlled, so you don't have to worry about it and take care of itself, but that clicks on at about 180 to keep the differential cool down around 200. 300 degrees is when bearings start to delaminate, so you never want to get to 300 degrees. Also in the engine, when you get to 300 degrees in the engine, that's a big problem too. Question?
Yeah, we have a question from Dan Gramza. What about running a 10-degree cooler T-stat?
10-degree cooler thermostat, it's going to open sooner, but if you're on track, I mean, the thermostat's going to be open no matter what. So, I mean, it'll open the thermostat quicker as you're getting the car warmed up, but once you're at temperature, it's not going to make a lot of difference. The other thing is fans. Running on track, you typically don't need fans unless you're running really hot. On our race cars, we'll put just a small fan, but that's if you're sitting in the pit lane or just waiting to go out. I mean, you always pull up in line in the pit lane, and a lot of times another 5 minutes, you wait and wait and wait. The car gets hot. We have a little button switch in there to turn the fan on, so we can keep the radiator cool. But once it's on track, you've got air moving through there on its own, and that should be making the car cool enough. This is the part I'm really uncomfortable with, but we're going to do it anyway. You need to throw me some thumbs up, because that helps spread what we're doing out to more people through Facebook. And remember, we talked about there in our program, they really aren't hearts that come up. Those are actually heart-shaped wrenches. So you can throw me some wrenches too. So that's kind of like on the cooling side. If you do need an oil cooler, my package is thermostatically controlled oil cooler, which means that the plate that goes on the block also has a thermostat. It doesn't send oil to the cooler until the engine oil gets 180 degrees, so that you don't spend a whole lot of extra time heating up the oil before it gets hot. And the other thing I have custom oil coolers made for racing, and they work extremely well. It's a dual pass, so we have both of the hoses going into the same side, so they don't have to loop over. Another thing on oil coolers, there's always two inlet and outlet on an oil cooler, and we've seen cars that have come in with both of the inlet and outlet pointing down. Never want to do that. You always want to have the in and out pointing up, or on the side pointing that way, because when they're pointing down, you're going to create an air cavity on the top, which means you're not going to get the full potential. And then when you've got them, if you have them going straight up, it's not a problem either in and out. If you've got them going sideways, in is at the bottom and out is at the top, so that you don't have an opportunity for air to collect in there. So that's on the oil cooler. If anybody really has oil cooling problems, then give me a call. And like I say, we've got a really good package. I mean, it's seriously professional grade oil cooler.
One question regarding that.
Another question?
Yeah. Back to engine oil. What is too hot? Full synthetic.
Engine oil. What is too hot? Full synthetic. Too hot is 300 degrees. Now, if you see that, all the bearings are going to fall apart. As far as now, on newer cars, it's really hard to elevate water temperature to make the car faster. Now, on like a traditional radiator, we'll use factory radiator caps are like 17 pounds pressure before they blow off. For our race cars with a traditional radiator, we'll run either 24 or 32 pound, because every pound of pressure you add, you increase the boiling point. And running a race car at like 230 degrees makes a lot of power. They just make a lot of power. But you've got to have the right type of cap so you don't blow all the antifreeze out. And as far as synthetic, I don't like my oil temperature to go over 250. And most of the time, with the cars I build, we're seeing oil and water temperature about the same, which is where you want to keep it. Over 250 is just, kind of stay away from that. And running the cars anywhere from 200 to 220, water and oil temperature is fine. You can make a lot of power that way. Okay. Rake. Here's another question that Dan asked is, rake and the effect on the anti-squat and the panner bar location.
On that, he has a couple. Is it Dan Ganza?
Nope, Dan Upchurch.
Okay, never mind.
We'll get to Dan Ganza in a minute.
Okay.
I'm kind of rake on the car on a S197 live axle. I like to run with driver half a tank of gas, about a 1/4 of an inch rake in the back, higher in the back. No more than a 1/2 an inch, because when the gas tank gets empty, it'll go up even higher. And as far as impacting anti-squat, it's the height of the car isn't really going to impact anti-squat that much, because the anti-squat is a function of the control arms. Now, if it's going to affect it because you're going to move the instant center back and forth, but the panner bar has no effect. There's no effect on panner bars as far as the ride height or rake. So we rake 1/4 of an inch, driver, half a tank of gas, and yeah, I'm just thinking. Anytime I stop, I'm thinking. I'd have to draw it out, but maybe we'll do that when we do the 5-day. I'll kind of draw out different ride heights and how it affects anti-squat, which anti-squat affects the roll center. Actually, the axle bracket affects the roll center, or not the roll center, the instant center, and the instant center is the what makes the anti-squat, anti-lift. Also, another thing we talked about before is that the same brackets we use to anti-squat to get the car to come down faster, put more pressure on the tires faster, also reduces the lift under braking. And for those that weren't here before, anti-squat is when the spring compresses. It's how much the chassis comes down before it actually puts weight on the tires to go forward. With no anti-squat, it's going to come down a lot. And that's why there's not a lot of anti-squat in a factory car, because of a whole bunch of things they have to work around. Which means that that's why you spin the tires so easily and the car gets loose. So by adding anti-squat, the car does, as soon as the car starts coming down, it's going to put pressure on those tires for traction. And the panner bar location, we put the panner bar, like I said, at the bottom of the differential, because that's as low as you can get the roll center in a live axle car. And back when we were doing Trans Am cars in the 90s, I talked before about how a Watts link is the best way to locate an axle, but where the center of the pin is the roll center, and in the Mustang you can't get them very low. Well, back then what we do is we take a Watts link, we mount it horizontal on the bottom of the differential, so we've had the best axle location with the lowest possible roll center. We do the same thing with moving the roll center all the way down to the bottom of the differential. We get the roll center down so it keeps the car wanting to jump up.
I have a couple questions running back to the cooling. So Ernie Abercrombie, so that temperature, should I have the fan kick on or have it set at 180 now? Should I raise it to 220?
No, leave the fan. He wants to know if the fan kick on or raise 220. It's kind of a tough question. I know on the GT500s, you have to run fans sometimes. But here's the thing: if the fan kicks on at 180, it's not going to hurt anything unless you're going really, really fast. Then you might the fan might stall the air that's coming through. The air might be coming through as fast as the fan. Raising it to 220, I don't think I'd recommend that, because when you're sitting still, that fan's not going to kick off. So see, I'm thinking as I'm talking. So I think leaving it at 180 is your best solution.
This is another one from Kalen Racing. Is there a certain water mixture to use in your radiator or additives to mix in?
Oh, that's a good question. Certain mixture for the radiator additives. Okay, for race cars only run water, straight water, no coolant. Coolant is basically illegal, and the reason for that, if somebody happens to blow a radiator hose off, if it's just water, it's kind of like they sweep it and it dries. If it's antifreeze, it's like oil, and they got to spend a lot of time cleaning up the track. So what we run, we'll run like straight water, but with an additive, something like water wetter. There's a couple of different additives like that out there that actually make the water transfer heat a lot better. So just straight water for a race car and water wetter. There's a number of different brands like that. Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting this stuff. I'm thinking cars. Carrie's thinking all the other stuff. We need you guys kind of like spread the word, because this is getting really cool. We're getting more people involved. Here she is. And the more people involved, the more questions I get, the more diversity we have in questions, and you know, the more we can talk. I can talk about. Cause I can talk about all day on things I want to talk about, but I want to talk about things that you want to know about. So I think that was kind of the big questions I had today. And how to. This was another question from Brad K. that's got a small overheating issue. It's a 95 GT. Call us, get one of our triple pass drop-in radiators. It'll do wonders in pulling your water temperature down. Okay, I lost my coach, so I'm gonna have to play it by ear here. We talked about the H&R, and we talked about he's got the 18 by 10, and 285/35 is a much better tire fitment on 18 by 10. On our track cars, we'll run 19 by 10 on the front and 19 by 11 on the back. 305 front, the 305 in the back with 11-inch wheels, and a 285/35 on the front on a 10-inch, or in some cases we'll run a 295 if we're starting to use too much tire on the front with a 285. The other thing that I'll do if we're starting to use the front tires up more than the rear tires, I'll go up a little bit of rear spring rate to help take to loosen up the back just a touch, so the front tires won't wear out as much. So, have any more questions?
Questions? It'll take about 15 seconds for them to get it.
Harry says it takes about 15 seconds to get the questions. Talked about the 5-day, and it's not going to be day. It's going to be like an hour each evening for 5 evenings in a row. And you know, the subject matter, and this will be kind of like it'll work around a little bit depending on how much I talk each day. But the first day we're going to talk about the first crucial steps you need to do in building a performance street car or a track car. And most people want to know about track cars and handling, so that's kind of like the direction we're going to go on this. But what we talk about for the track cars is totally applicable to street performance. So they're kind of like the same thing. I mean, the only real difference we have between our street performance and our track is just springs and shocks. So everything that, as far as geometry and everything else, is a total crossover. And then we're going to talk about building the performance platform. To me, that's the very first thing you do when you build your car, is build your performance platform. By that I mean chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. Once you get that platform, then you can, first of all, you're making the car as good as it can be, then you can add power. The thing that just drives me nuts and just makes me scared is when people put a supercharger and like 700-800 horsepower on a factory stock chassis. You have to remember that the factory chassis is engineered around 300 or 400 horsepower, whatever the motor is. And when you add that much extra, you're completely overwhelming the chassis and the brakes. And that's why, you know, I talk about getting the performance platform set up and then adding power. But if you do the performance platform first for a track car, you're going to find you probably don't need any more power, because you're going to be quicker than a lot of people, because you're going to be carrying more mid-corner speed. You're going to be able to brake later, which makes your straightaway longer. You're going to be able to carry more mid-corner speed, which gives you more corner exit speed, and you'll be able to get to the gas sooner, which makes the next straightaway longer. So do the performance platform first. So first day we're going to talk about part 1 of performance platform, handling suspension geometry. Day 3 is performance platform 2, which is brakes, wheels, tires, cooling, and safety. And then on 4, we're going to try to get into talking about dialing in the car and making adjustments. And then day 5 is I'm going to come up with some more tips and tricks. And then also this will be a lot of Q&A on day 5. So that's kind of what the 5 days is going to be. It should be pretty good. But to get to that, you need to be in the Speed Therapy Society. So if you're not a member of the Speed Therapy Society, please join because we're doing this private group because we have much better communication. We've got a lot of people talking to each other, a lot of people sharing information. It's really cool. So that's where the 5-day workshop is going to be. It was in the Speed Therapy Society.
Facebook group.
And it's a private Facebook group. So on Facebook, you can just click over and do that. And the name of the workshop is Transforming Your Driving Experience, which I'm really hoping I can help you transform your driving experience because there's nothing feels better than a good handling car on track. That everything works and nothing is scary. And I mean, the way I build my cars is for me first. I mean, I just love a car that handles, and there's nothing better than to be able to really go around a corner and feel those G loads in your butt, and you're just pulling off a corner. I mean, to me, that's like nirvana. And Kerry says every time I do a track weekend, Monday, I look younger. So you can consider this a youth program. You can regain your youth by doing track days when we can do them again. Questions?
Yes. Okay, Doug Vanderbrink, this is back to the water wetter. I'm wondering if you use regular water or distilled. What's the difference between the two?
Doug's asking whether you use regular water or distilled. I guess it kind of depends on the quality of the water you've got where you live. If you've got some really hard water, you might want to think about using distilled. But if you got pretty decent water, you can use regular water. It just depends on how much junk is in the water, and you can probably tell by if you got calcium buildup on things, then you want to go to distilled water. So it just depends on where you live. I mean, distilled water is never a bad option. If you want to do that, yay. And then add your water wetter, and you're going to be as good as you get, plus our 3-core radiator.
Okay, let's see. This is from John Julian. Is a Watts Link the best setup for 2007 Mustang rear live axle?
Okay, we're getting back to the Watts Link, and this is for a 2007 live axle. And I talked about this before, but everybody keeps asking the same question, so we'll talk about it again. The Watts Link is the very best method of locating an axle, period. The problem is where the center pin, the bell crank is, that's your roll center. And just due to the nature of the bell crank, you really can't get that down very low. And I like a really low roll center. In my suspension geometry that we'll talk about, I bring the rear roll center down, the front roll center up, so the car is much flatter through the corner. You can get to the gas sooner. But with a Watts Link, it's like stuck, and you can't get it down. Again, as I mentioned before, in the Trans Am days, we put the Watts Link on the bottom of the differential horizontally, and that's easy to do because we've got like under rails, it comes underneath the axles. It's pretty easy to shoot the radius rods over that. It's pretty impractical for the everyday guy to do in his garage. In fact, back in, I can't remember, 2003 maybe, we actually did an axle where we drilled the bottom, tapped it, and then used the bell crank off of a Crown Vic. And we decided that for the average guy in the garage, that was like way too much work. And then we have a problem is where do we pick it up on the chassis because it's really low. So that's when we went to the lowering. We lower the roll center with the panner bar, and we get it all the way down the bottom of the differential. Again, where the panner bar crosses the center line of the car, that's the roll center. And the stock Mustang is kind of like up in the middle of the differential. And we move it down about 4 inches to the bottom of the differential, and you would be amazed how much difference that makes as far as keeping the car flat through the corners. And the flatter it is going into the corner and mid-corner, the sooner you get back to the gas. When I'm on track, I'm into the gas before I get to the apex. On some corners, I'll be flat on the gas at the apex, and my apex for the way I design cars, live axle cars, is really, really late. Like where the inner curb goes, that little red and white curb. Driving clubs usually have a cone at the apex that everybody shoots for. Well, with a with a Mustang, live axle Mustang, with the geometry I've got in, you want to shoot for the end of that curve. You want to go really, really late. I designed the cars to just brake super late so you can outbrake anybody, and you can get the car rotated really fast and get back to the gas fast, and it gives you a whole more corner exit speed, and corner exit speed is your terminal speed in the straightaway. We have a video that it's out there somewhere of me at Road America in my 2012, and it's naturally aspirated. The only improvement is I was able to get a Boss motor from Ford Racing, and nothing special, just a plain Boss motor with headers, cold air kit, and a tune. So just pretty much just a plain old naturally aspirated motor. At Road America, at turn 14, which is the last turn before the straightaway, I was into the corner so fast I actually had to back out of the gas to keep from running into a Viper. And once he kind of cleared the corner, he gave me a quick pass by, and I scooted past him. And because my corner exit speed was higher than his, I was able to hold him off all the way down the straightaway. So that's what I mean by having late braking, quick rotation, and back to the gas. You get really off the corner fast. And then the other part, this is the really, really cool part, is going into turn 5. People know Road America's big, long straightaway, and turn 5 is one of the real famous corners. It's a 90-degree left-hander and up a hill. And you'll see me, I'm like, I don't know, a bunch of car lengths back from this Porsche. But by the time we get to the corner, I'm parking my car in his trunk. Completely outbroke a GT3 RS Porsche. And it's a combination of everything. It's the suspension geometry, it's the tires, it's the brakes. I have a little aero in that car. So, I mean, it just, the cool thing about outbraking people, now in a racing, your best opportunity to pass somebody is under braking. So that's why the first thing I engineered in my car is so you can really late brake and outbrake people, and the car will rotate quick so you can get around them and off the corner. The thing about late braking is in not racing, but for track days, is I use it as an intimidation tool. If there's somebody I want to get past, I'll lay way back, and then I'll do my super late brake, and I'll just come right up on their trunk, and they kind of get flustered, and they point you by on the next straightaway. I had one guy tell me that it may have been at Road America, I can't remember, where he came up to me and said, you know, I was going to turn 5, and you were like way back. Before I got through the corner, I saw red in 3 mirrors. So it becomes an intimidation tool. So you use late braking. You can't get too crazy and it bumps somebody, but you lay back and come up on really hard under braking, and they'll fill the mirrors. And that's always a good way to get a point by on the next straightaway. Another question.
Yeah, this is regarding the phase 2 watts. This is from Dan Ganza, who has a phase 2 watts on his car. He says allows the pivot to be adjusted. That must have been something you were talking about.
Yeah, on some of the Watts-Link cars, you can get the pivot adjusted, but you can't typically get it down to the bottom of the differential, and that's where you want it to be. I mean, you can get it like maybe a couple inches down, which is good. I mean, it's anytime you can lower the roll center, it's good. But you really want it to be at the bottom of the differential. So whatever the adjustments are, put it the lowest possible adjustment, because that's going to move your roll center down. And if you've got it up high, you should be able to feel the difference going around the corner. How are you doing on questions?
We have a couple more, and
we'll squeeze in a couple more questions.
Except for first, I don't know if the thumbs up is working. Can you have just somebody give
Carrie
me a
doesn't know if the thumbs up are working. People shoot thumbs up so she can see if they're working. And those wrenches shaped as hearts.
I don't see them. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so... Okay, this is a call Jim paid directly for that special one. I don't know what that. Okay.
I don't know. He said call Jim paid directly for that special. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, so anyway.
Oh yeah, they're coming up. Here comes heart-shaped wrenches and some thumbs up. Hey, it works.
Okay, Michael Morrison. Okay, Herstifer. What is the benefit of staggered setup for race Mustangs?
I'm going to have to try to interpret what it means. Herstifer is one of our customers in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
That we communicate a lot, and I actually did a video consultation with them a few weeks ago. What's the question again? The staggered?
Yeah, what is the benefit of staggered setup for race Mustangs?
I'm guessing mean by staggered is staggered tire size. As far as diameter, I don't like to get the diameters too far off, but a stagger is, always do, if you got a lot of power, you always want a wider rear tire on the back and smaller on the front, but you don't want to get that out of proportion, because you get too big of a tire on the back, you're going to overwhelm the front, and the front's going to push. So it's kind of a matter of kind of matching them. And then the other thing we can do is use the spring rates at the back to shift some weight around. You always talk about front spring rate. My front spring rates always stay the same. The rear is where I play with, depending on the car, depending on the power. I'll change the spring rates by maybe 25 pounds or so. Like I said before, on my car, we were chewing up front tires with the 185s or 285s. So I added a 295 and we went up 25 pounds in the spring rate, fixed it. So that's what, it's kind of like you could use the back of the car to influence the front of the car. It kind of seems not right, but that's the way it works. Okay.
Okay, so I think this is regarding when you were on track at Road Market, talking about coming up hard on a customer. This is, I think this is related to the Ernie Abercrombie. So are you making a check make of the apex instead of a U shape?
Making an apex rather than a U shape. Well, if you look at the video, when I chased that Porsche and out broke him, I couldn't see. I missed my apex by about not 10 feet, maybe 5 or 6 feet, which made me a little slower going up the hill. Say the question again.
So are you making a check make of the apex instead of a U shape?
A checkmate rather than a U shape. Let's call it a contracted U, because you want to go in, a regular going around apex is kind of a nice smooth curve. Okay, we want to go in late. We want to make that curve shorter and get back on the gas sooner. So I guess it's more of a really narrow curve as far as getting to late apex. Because I said before, somebody want to know how to learn a track, just do super late apex. When I'm teaching people, coaching people on track, and I get them to just start doing the late apex. Now, the thing is that everybody, when they start driving, uses an early apex. That's the way it is. And the tough part is to learn how to make your apex later and later. The way you can tell if you apex too early is if you're on the gas hard coming out of the corner and that you want to run off the racetrack and you have to lift off the gas, then your apex was too early. Which means two things. Your apex was too early, you had to lift off the gas. You lost momentum coming out of the corner, so you lost speed down the straightaway. So you really have to work on, I tell people, think of driving past the corner and coming back to it. And when people do that, they all of a sudden see, wow, the whole corner looks completely different, because when I come around, all of a sudden I'm lined up down the next straightaway. So it's not a big curve. It's not a right angle, but it's kind of like a late swooping curve.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions.
2 more questions.
K Alien Racing, do you recommend using a cooler on your power steering system? Does that actually help with handling response?
Ooh, good question. Do we need a cooler on the power steering? What we learned back in 86 and 87 with the Celine cars, we had to do a couple things, because we ended up all the time puking steering fluid all over the place. We did 2 things. One, we were at the little top where you put in the fluid. We actually cut that off, put in about a 4-inch section of radiator hose. So we lifted that up, so we made that taller. The other thing is we added a radiator, power steering cooler to keep the temperature down. Anybody with an SN95, I would strongly recommend a power steering cooler. And it's as easy as looking up a power steering cooler for an 03, 04 Cobra. I think one of the aftermarket companies still makes them. You can get them through, you look it up online, you can get it through somewhere like AutoZone or something like that. And it's really good because it's a loop with fins, and it just integrates in. You always want to put it on the non-pressure side, by the way. You don't want to put that on the pressure side. Non-pressure side, and absolutely run, if you're running on track with an SN95, run a steering cooler. Haven't really needed it on the pneumatic power steering on the 5 to 10s. But I would not. I would suggest if you're going to do a lot of heavy track driving, go ahead and put it on that. Obviously, 11 to 14s, we don't need a cooler because it's all electric steering. And we're going to squeeze in one more question for today.
Okay, unless you can go longer and people want you to. Give a thumbs up if you want to go
Okay,
longer.
if you want me to go a little longer for more questions, kind of do this thing.
Okay, he's going to...
She's looking. It gives me a chance to drink my coffee.
Cliff Glidden.
Cliff Glidden.
Yeah. Coming in a fast corner at the end of the main straight braking, initial pedal pressure, the car pulls hard and quick to the outside. 121 or so down to 80 or so. Very disconcerting. Okay,
Cliff, in fact, I'm going to have one of my 15-minute consults with him. He's got a FR500S. I've actually got 3 notebooks full of data for those cars because I engineered 3 cars in the Mustang Challenge in 2009-10. Cliff's saying under really hard braking, the car wants to...
initial pedal pressure, the car pulls hard and quick to the outside.
Okay, on initial pedal pressure, the car pulls quick and hard to the outside. There's a whole litany of things that could do that. The first would be alignment. If the alignment's off a little bit, it could do that. And we'll talk about alignment in the 5-day. If the toe is way off, it could do that. If you've got a bad shock, it could do that. Tire pressure could do that. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that could do that. It's sort of like a checkoff. And when we have our 15-minute, we'll dive into that a little bit deeper because I need to know more about what's on the car, what shocks you have, what alignment you're running. But I can come up with an answer, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, Joe Johnson.
Joe Johnson. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Should I use Evans cooling in my Shelby GT350?
Okay, should I use Evans cooling in his Shelby GT350? I have very little experience with it. From what I've heard, it does a really good job of cooling. The one thing I can share is when I had my chassis dyno on our shop on Gasoline Alley, we dynoed a lot of the Indy Lights cars. In fact, it's because of me and my dyno that when they're running the V6 Buicks in the Indy Lights cars, the whole program changed because we discovered that there was not parity between the engines. And then those guys would come in all the time because it's a spec class, trying to come up with little tricks. How can we do this? To change the spark plugs. And we had some guy that came in that's supposed to be the really big spark plug guru with these special spark plugs, and it just didn't show much on the dyno at all. Somebody did try the Evans, and it ran cooler, except it lost horsepower. And my guess is because it's thicker than water, it's taking some more horsepower to drive it. So I think the answer, to the best of my experience, is it will cool better, but you might lose a little bit of power because it's thicker.
Okay, this is just a comment from Greg Oswell.
Oh, Greg Oswell.
Okay, I started with the platform first, the Kenny Brown suspension and the whole platform, and then went to 700 rear wheel horsepower. And man, does the car carry speed, especially down the straights.
Oh, he said that he did follow my formula. He did the whole performance platform first, and then he had a supercharger.
I know, it just says 700.
He just said 700 horsepower, and he says, man, is it fast down the straightaway. That's because with the rear suspension geometry, you're able to get more of that power down, so you don't have to feather the gas as long. You can get back to the gas sooner. Without changing the rear geometry and a lot of power coming off the corner with a Mustang, you really can't put your foot down, because as soon as you do, you're going to start spinning the back tires. So Greg is saying that because he did the performance platform first, then add the power, that he's super fast down the straightaway. That's because he's super fast off the corner. So have we got any more, or are we going to wrap it up?
There we have a few more.
Oh, have a few more.
Okay.
Almost out of coffee.
Let's see. John Julian. Is there a way to keep the passenger airbag active after installing a 6-point harness capable race seats such as Recaro or Sparco types?
Ooh, that's a question that I don't know if I'm going to give you a good answer, but I'll try my best. He wants to know if you can keep the airbag active
Yeah, after installing.
after installing Sparco seats on the passenger side.
And a 6-point harness.
Well, the 6-point harness isn't the deal, it's a Sparco seat.
Okay.
I would have to talk to somebody that knows the electrics of the car, because I think there's a trigger in the seat that that turns the airbag on when somebody's sitting on it. So I'm thinking, I'm just thinking out loud again. I don't know if it's possible to put that trigger in the seat that you've got. Or here's another thought off the top of my head is if you figure out the wiring, maybe you could just put a switch on that you can turn the airbag on with like with a toggle switch when you're in the car for the other driver. You'd have to look at the schematic and figure out, you got to be careful because if you hit the wrong things, you don't want that. But you need to figure out what is the on. As far as the pressure on the seat, there should be a clip on there, and there should be certain wires. You trace down what is the power and where the power goes, and you can maybe just take a short circuit that clip and have a toggle switch that turns it on and turns it off. That's my best guess.
Okay, once you mention this, we have 2 more questions left.
But if you have more questions, and remember, anybody's coming late, join our Speed Therapy Society. It's really getting cool. Got a lot of people sharing a lot of stuff and a lot of cars. Don't be afraid to put your cars up there. And that's where most of these questions are coming from, by the way, except for the live questions. I mean, the questions that I talk about, like the main questions that I pick out during the week, all come from what's coming in off of the Speed Therapy Society. And again, I'm getting prompts from the side here to kind of like spread the word around, because the more people we have, the more questions we get, the more information we get, the more things we can share. And invite your friends. There should be some sort of click thing that you can invite your friends. So if you've got somebody that think you can really get some benefit of what we're doing, be sure to invite them. The more the merrier.
Okay, Michael Morrison.
Michael Morrison.
What are the effects when the front roll center transfers from above ground? Let me read this one. What are the effects when the front roll center transfers from above ground to below ground, when the roll center is level with the ground?
Okay, the effects of when the roll center travels from above ground to below ground, or when it's at ground. When it travels to below ground, that means the point that the front of the car wants to roll around is underground, which means it's going to roll really hard under that outside tire. When it's above the ground, it's going to roll around that point, so it's going to roll a little flatter. That's why when in my AGS4 suspension package S197, I brought the rear roll center down. We talked about that, how taking the roll out of the back, bring the front roll center up. All of a sudden, like a stock Mustang, you're going to have a low roll center, high roll center. So the car is going to be like this going around the corner. So it's going to just really load up that outside front tire. When you bring the front up and the back down, the car's going to be a lot flatter, which means more speed through the middle of the corner. And getting it, it's above ground, it can be at different heights, and it's just going to affect the roll. It's just the roll center is the roll center. That's the point the car wants to roll around. You don't want it deep underground. Now, I'll make an exception for that. On our true race cars, I've got a double wishbone suspension that I designed back in '03. We partnered with Ford. That probably won't come out for at least another year or so. It kind of went on the shelf when I took a break. But what we did is I had Buddy Fay, who's a friend of mine. He's also one of the top race engineers in the country. He's engineered everything. There's a book out there called On Data Acquisition. He wrote that book. He's won championships in Trans Am. He's engineered NASCAR. He's engineered prototypes. He's a really smart guy. And what we did is we took the geometry from the late series Variety J Trans Am cars and the Pratt & Miller cars and kind of combined it into a bolt-on package. And in that case, the front roll center is about that much underground. And for real race cars, that's kind of where they like to be. It's really hard to really get that precise on a street car because you don't have all the adjustability. We put the roll center into the initial geometry. So that's my exception to the roll center underground, is we just put it in about that far. And then the rear roll center is, you know, at the bottom of the differential. And I'll talk about something else on that in coming weeks.
Okay, just two more comments.
Two more comments.
Yeah, Greg Oswald said his Cobra is a Kenny Brown serialized 01 Cobra, so that's the reason it handles great.
Greg said his Cobra is 01 Kenny Brown serialized Cobra, and that's why it handles so great. I'll agree.
Tim Thomasak.
Tim again.
Thanks for the session. Look forward to getting and installing my H&R RSS setup, adding it to the current rear grip kit.
Yeah, Tim is thanking me, and he's really excited to get these on. I am for you too, because you're gonna notice a big difference. Like I say, these, I mean, it's a 630 spring rate, so it's perfect for the track, for advanced drivers. But what we found is this package, because the valving in the shock actually will work for even intermediate drivers and novice drivers. You just have to, for the street, you just have to crank it all the way down. I think there's like 12 adjustments, and when you have a single adjustable shocks, typically you're adjusting mostly rebound and a little bit of bump. And for tuning cars, just about everything, most of the tuning we do is with rebound. And what rebound does, well, bump is controls how fast, you know, the car hit bump is just that, how fast it comes up when it hits a bump. Rebound is actually controlling the oscillations of the spring. Now, when a spring compresses, it's going to go wong or wong. Well, the whole idea of rebound is to control that wong, so it's wong. And that's why you have rebound. Now, if you're on track, if the car's got a little bounciness to it through a corner, you add a little more rebound. You just add, and I always start adjusting from full soft, and you just want just enough shock to gain control. Too much shock absorber and you're going to lose grip. So you work from the bottom and then you work in small increments. If it's pushing a little bit, you go like up 1 click at a time. If it's pushing a lot, you might go up 2 clicks at a time, but you never want to make huge jumps. The other thing you never want to do is making adjustments on a car. Every time you make an adjustment, it has to be, you're looking for a specific outcome. The last thing you want to do is you want to make 2 or 3 adjustments at the same time, because you're never going to know which adjustment did what. So you always make 1 adjustment at a time, and then write down your notebook. I'm talking about notebooks heavily. You've got to have your notebook. You make a shock adjustment, write it down. I added 2 clicks, the car did this. I added 2 more clicks, the car did this. I'd add 2 more clicks, oops, I had to back up. So always keep your notebook so you can reference it, and you're going to find different adjustments for different tracks. You know, my 2012 GT4 car that's in the video, that's just a single adjustable shock. It's a JRZ single adjustable, and for 90% of the people out there, a single adjustable shock is fine. And I always like to start people on single adjustable shocks, because you have to start learning what happens when you adjust a shock. If you don't have experience with double adjustable shocks, people can go crazy making many adjustments at a time. You just want to start with a single adjustable, because the way I look at it, if you've got a double adjustable shock, bump kind of gets you, this is like the simplest way possible, bump kind of gets you from turn in to the apex, and rebound kind of gets you from the corner off. But most of the tuning is done with rebound, and the rear shocks with rebound, use that for grip. If the car's a little bit loose coming off the corner, add rebound 1 click at a time, just until it kind of hooks up and goes. I think we're out of questions about that of time.
Yeah, just a couple things to mention.
A couple things to mention.
In the comment section, I always have a link to the speed therapy group.
Okay, in the comment section, there's a link to the speed therapy group.
And we're going to start everything you talk about. I'm going to put a link from our website on, because people are asking where to get it. Okay,
she's going to, everything we're talking about, we've got actually a YouTube channel. I got to remember, it says YouTube
TV.
Kenny Brown TV. And we're putting all these up so the people that don't have Facebook can access all of our sessions. And when we get to the Speed Therapy Society, the 5-day workshop is going to be through the private group on Facebook, but we're trying to work on a way that the people that don't have Facebook can join in. It's a little bit of a technology issue we're working through, but that's one of the things that's kind of slowing us down. We want to be sure that we can kick everybody in that wants to be in. So like I say, we'll let you know when we get a new date for that, and we're working to get the people that can participate that don't have Facebook.
Okay, and one comment from Jason Brown. If you aren't keeping a notebook, you will be surprised how often you refer to it.
If you are keeping a notebook, you'd be surprised how often you refer to it. And this will be my last comment. The thing about a notebook, if you think you're going to remember something, you're wrong. You make an adjustment, I'll remember that, you're wrong. You think you're going to remember to do this or do that, you're wrong. Write it down. I mean, it's just, I put my notebooks away, but I'll pull out some of my notebooks when we do the 5 days. So you can see I've got notebooks for Ruby, my car. I've got notebooks for the Mustang Challenge, 3 Mustang Challenge 500S Mustangs I did. I've got a notebook I helped a team start from scratch and build a S550 V6 Mustang for World Challenge touring car. And I'll show you, I got 2 notebooks. I got a build notebook and a track notebook. So get a notebook, lots of dividers, and write everything down. And also keep all your tire temperature in there. We'll get into that. And we've got a nice forum that we'll make available through the 5-day class on tire temperatures. So this is the longest half hour we've done so far, I think. So we're going to kind of wrap it up for the day. Get into Speech Therapy Society. Have your friends join. Send in questions and comments, because, like I say, that's where I get what I'm going to talk about. I work on what I'm talking about based on what you're interested in. So I'm talking about what you want to talk about, and then we'll answer live questions. And my true intent is to give you enough information so you truly can transform your driving experience. So my goodness, this has been a long day. So there's some more thumbs up coming in, and we sure appreciate that, because I guess Facebook is kind of strange. I guess that helps spread things out when that happens. So we like all that. Oh, there goes another heart-shaped wrench. So listen, everybody stay safe, stay healthy. We're kind of got ourselves kind of like cloistered. So, we're kind of staying away from all the bad things. I hope everybody else does the same. So stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.